So I just want to give a very brief introduction to Yasuo, because I don't think he needs much introduction. But Yasuo and I have been a very good drinking friend, but also very collaborative research, research collaborators for a long, long time, since the beginning of the embodied AI workshop in 2003. And we have been always discussing what's next for embodied intelligence research. And he is probably one of the most knowledgeable individual and inspiring person in the context of embodied intelligence. And I'm very happy to have him as the first plenary speaker of this event, just to kick off the discussion of this community, so that we can have a very enjoyable next 3 days for stimulating discussion with all the participants. So without further ado, I think I just hand over to Yasuo for the plenary talk. And please welcome Yasuo for this plenary speech. Thank you, Yasuo. Go ahead.
Thank you, Fumiya, for a very nice introduction. First of all, I want to post some URLs on a chat because, all right, so I have to stop the sharing first to do that. Because for copyright reasons, I want you to open a web browser on the side, and when the talk comes to the spot, look up the video yourself. So now I posted 2 URLs. So when I refer to them, please have a look at these videos. Okay, then I'll start. So today I titled my talk as this, embodiment as the basis of emergence and development of human behavior and cognition. And so I got a question from Fumiya that all the speakers should address. So first, why embodiment? For me, the first reason is because it is questioning about the developmental origin of human behavior and mind. So I'm a roboticist, AI researcher. So my ultimate goal will be to build an intelligence system close to humans, and I want to understand human behavior and mind so that I can build it. And so then naturally, the approach will be to follow developmental understanding. Development is an autonomous and adaptive construction of behavior and mind. So understanding development is the most straightforward way to the constructive understanding of the human behavior mind. And then when you take this developmental approach, naturally you start to ask this, what is happening in the beginning? So let's say in the beginning, and here I show a picture of a human fetus, the ultrasonic imaging. So here you initially it has a body and the environment as a uterus and the primitive nervous systems. And then what happens would be sensory motor loop taking place, maybe the spinal nervous system, neuronal circuits drives the body, the muscles, and then interact with the environment, and then some sensation happens, which is fed to the nervous systems, and this loop goes on, and then motor behavior, various motor behaviors would emerge, and as a result, sensory motor information structure will be formed, and that will be reflected in neural learning or self-organization, and then in turn these change the way the neural system drives the body. So that's in short, I would claim that body shapes brain. The second point is that I believe that the embodied intelligence will be a key to solving problems with current AI. As you know, there are many problems pointed out with the current AI. Typically, the data-intensive machine learning methods, the deep learning, data bias problem, reliability problem, and alignment. And typically, you see if you look at the first URL, posted URL, you see a video of a reinforcement learning result, very odd behavior, which is a result of optimizing for a plainly given reward function, resulting in unintended behavior. And also, you know, if you want the robots to respect things like this, the 3 laws of robotics by Asimov, but can a robot understand what it means not to harm humans? So these issues all, I think, boils down to embodied intelligence, because embodiment provides appropriate data to learn in consistency with physics or other agents over time and scale, and common ground with humans. So I discussed some of these issues, and also the most of the content of today's talk in this paper. So please refer to that for details. So what is embodiment? One way to approach this question is starting from looking at brainless bodies. And this is a very typical example, and a very famous one, called the passive dynamic walker. And please have a look at the movie on the second URL. That one is from Andy Ruina's lab, referred to here. Let's say, enter this paper. And this paper is a very famous one, analyzed a passive dynamic walker, which doesn't have any battery, motor, any sensors, just the mechanical structure like these, 2 rods connected with a free joint, and with each rod has a sole, curved sole, and the setup is placed on a inclinated floor, and once you leave it, it goes off and then follows a very natural walking behavior. Now, there's no explicit control, anything. So this is a very famous example that simple physical structure gives rise to a meaningful behavior, such as a biped walking. Next example is from our lab. Yuma built this robot with jumps, but in a very natural way. So if you look at the behavior, the natural ordering of each joint extensions are observed, but actually we do not control the robot in that way. We just switch on all the actuators at once. So at the full power, the thing starts to take off, and the natural physics, the physics takes over and then gives rise to the natural motor behavior. And even it adds adaptivity to perturbations. Another example is this roll and rise behavior. So the person is lying flat on the floor and then swings up his legs and then swings down and in one action stands up. We measured and analyzed this behavior and discovered that there's a non-uniform structure in the phase space of the task. And particularly, there's a very important single point here where the both feet hits the ground. And at this point, you have to take a very particular posture. Otherwise, you fail in the test. And we did some analysis on this, and then actually this here is a very narrow condition, whereas in other parts of the task, you have certain margins. So we call this point in NAC, K-N-A-C-K, which is a critical point in the whole task. But this is interesting. This is a symbolic structure emerging from natural or physical interactions between the body and the floor. And it has a certain meaning. So in case you tell somebody, if somebody else is trying to do the same task and having difficulty, you tell the guy that this is the important point. The guy knows how to succeed in the test. So this is like real symbols. Let's look at the real robot experiments. So this is a humanoid robot we built, and it's about 1.6 meter tall, and then it weighs like 70 kilos, and trying to do the task and getting better, but many failures. And as you look at it, you start to sort of, I think, feel some sympathy. And it's getting better, coming close. But when it fails, it looks like more human than the complete success, I believe. So I think this is effect of another effect of embodiment. That's close. And so any deviations? So that is trying hard, but failed very close. But now it broke its back, and we replaced the backbone, and then success. So when it fails, even if it fails, so there happens a variety of patterns, but all these patterns sort of obey the physical embodiment. And that's why I think we feel that it's the way it behaves, even in failure cases, is like somewhat human-like. So in summary, embodiment shapes interaction dynamics and hence generates information in this, which means like walking behavior, the meaningful patterns, or the symbolic structure. So that's my understanding of embodiment. And here I refer to the paper with these guys, and I think Olaf is here in this workshop as well. So we stated this embodiment as the important aspect is the information self-structuring, and through physical interactions with the environment, information structure is actively induced in sensory inputs. But now I think I should modify the last phrase to the interaction dynamics. So I think it is more general. Okay. Now, then we can add in a neural coupling, and that will give us adaptation and emergence. So corresponding to the passive dynamic walking, there's I think all the roboticists know that there is a line of research using neural oscillators or central pattern generators driving the musculoskeletal system. This is the work by Taga using a Matsuoka's oscillator driving the musculoskeletal model of the biped walker, and show the adaptive walking on the horizontal plane, and even capability to cope with perturbations. That's a very famous one. And then recently, we published a paper on the effect of spiking signals of neurons. And stochastic neural spikes provide immediate adaptivity to the sensory motor system. Just for easy understanding what happens is I show a movie. So here is a typical reflex-based control of walking. So it walks on a natural, ordinary plane, but when it comes to the purple terrain, which is a surface with a very low friction coefficient, so it's really extremely slippery, so it fails. But then if we add in spiking neural network, just in the path of output from base reflex system to the muscles, in between we insert the spiking neural network, it immediately exhibits very good adaptivity. So it doesn't fail, and it even shows various walking strategies. So it's like a change the gait, like skating almost. So that's one effect. Then about emergence. So we explore this kind of configuration. So coupling the chaotic maps with the sensor and motor loop. So inserting the chaotic map in the sensory motor loop for many degrees of freedom. And so these chaotic nonlinear dynamics interact each other. So they are coupled through embodiment. And this is inspired by coupled maps model, theoretical model on chaos research. And so I show the experimental results. So this is a model with 2 cylinders connected with a free joint with 12 muscle models, each driven by a chaos map. So there's no coordination circuit. So each muscle is driven independently, but immediately they sort of cooperate. So things like antagonistic relations and things like that emerge, and then rhythmical movement emerge. This shows the adaptation to the change of the environmental condition. So it immediately changed the swinging orientation in a different setup called insect-like model. We have 12 legs independently driven by chaos maps. So even there's no explicit coordination circuits. In a few seconds, the certain gait pattern emerges and travels in the certain directions. And even it exhibits adaptation. So when it hits the wall, some chaotic period after that, and then new gait patterns emerge in a new orientations, similarly adapting to this situation. So these are like how we can naturally extract the natural property or natural patterns from embodiments. Recently, Kohei Nakajima and my student IWEI published this work on designing desired patterns in a chaotic itinerancy on reservoir, which is a large-scale nonlinear neural network, and the system spontaneously switches from one pattern to another. And so this is a theoretical model, but probably we can extend this to implement some organized behavior patterns without distracting the natural dynamical process. We extended the experiments I showed before with a more biological setup using neural oscillators and muscle models and built real robots. So this is a quadruped robot driven, again, each muscle is driven by a chaos map independently, and coordination emerges from coupling through the embodiment, and shows various behaviors going forward, backwards, swinging the body, and etc. And when we analyze the information flow using transferring entropy between the muscle states, we observe this emergent information flow seemingly corresponding to sort of a control architecture of all the gate patterns. Like when left leg goes forward, left hand leg goes forward, and then after that, synchronized with the right foreleg, and things like that. So in information circuit structure emerges from dynamical interactions through the body. So additionally, so embodiment. So my current definition of what embodiment is: the embodiment imposes meaningful constraints on sensory signals and sensory motor dynamics, which are orthogonal to data flow. Then this is very important because unlike typical machine learning, like you feed input, you define output, and then optimize the input-output relationship, embodiment imposes orthogonal constraints. So it doesn't specify any inputs or outputs, but it is valid over any inputs or outputs, always consistent. So that's a very important property. And about emergence, so it's the way to extract various patterns respecting the embodiment constraints. And the important thing is not to optimize to given fixed tasks or conditions, but what's important is to always instantaneously adapt to the given immediate situation. And this is possible because the embodiment gives you the information about the current situations, and then it immediately changes the way all the dynamical processes are coupled together. Right. So then integrating these views into a developmental scenario is what we've been working on these years. And here again, we see a real human baby movie. And then on the right-hand side, it's our fetus model, the older version, actually, but musculoskeletal model of the human fetus. Here, the red lines represent the muscles, and then the cutaneous receptors, the tactile receptors on the surface of the skin, and it's floating in the water. So as it moves, it feels the water pressure, and the signal is fed to the brain. So about the body model, we collaborated with medical doctors and also collected from various sources of information or the data, and created about 400 muscles, 36 degrees of freedom, rather accurate fetus body model, and then implemented primitive spinal circuits with motor neurons and sensory neurons, and with tactile cell receptors, and then brain model, and we created a spiking neural network with learning using spike time dependent plasticity model and integrated these. So the fetus body, the muscles are driven by the neural oscillators in the spinal circuit, and sort of they the processes are coupled through the body and then give rise to various behavior patterns. We analyze the limb movement patterns, things like that, and compared with in certain indices with the biological observation data, and confirm that it's biologically plausible. Here's the whole brain model. We use the DTI data, which gives you the white matter structure, which means the like wiring between the cortical areas, and then reflect that to our artificial neural network with layered structures. And then this shows one of our cortex simulation that shows a spontaneous activity corresponding to a resting state activity. This is an infant version of the brain model. Okay. And here I show an integrated experiment. So the body is driven by the neural oscillators in the spinal circuit, and then it moves in the uterus model with a liquid, and then the proprioception and tactile information is fed to the cortical model, which learns, and we tested the results. So here is a close-up of somatosensory area of the brain, and we see a clearly segregated representation of the body here acquired. But here is the same area, but with very poor structure. This version is derived from the ex utero experiment, which means we put the baby model outside of the uterus and put it on a bed like this, and let it do the same learning experiences. So this shows that difference in environment significantly affect the neural learning and learning about self-body. Also, we experimented on multi-sensory integration, vision and proprioception integration, and the baby brain which learned in utero, even without additional training like feeding vision and proprioception and going through learning. So even we do not do that. So just the baby learns about only proprioception inside utero. Take out the brain and then feed take out the fetus and then feed the visual proprioception combined stimuli, like moving the hand in front of the eyes. The brain already responds to the bimodal signal. Again here, if you do ex utero learning, the response is very low. So these are corresponding to actually resonate well with other findings about ASD children. They report that some of the sensory representations about body is different from typical children. So this suggests somehow the connection with ASD, which is typically thought of as a impairment of social cognition capability. However, this suggests the difference is already in very early sensory motor learning about self-body. We did other experiments on purpose peripersonal space learning or double touch, and also anticipatory activity, things like that. And we are thinking about hypothetical scenario about the tactile path to self-other cognition. So connecting sensory motor level to social cognition through, acquiring body map. And then gradually, as the environment changes, body changes, they pose gradually different problems to the nervous system. And then gradually the understanding about the body and object is formed, and finally reaching the recognition that there is someone else there. And then at some point, consciousness might emerge. So there's a continuous path from movement to body map to cognition, and you're still following this path. Just to show you, in order to experiment the afterbirth interactions, to experiment realistic interactions with humans and objects in realistic environment, we built this robot with all the tactile, whole body tactile skin, visual auditory sensors, and that will give you realistic data. Now, my ultimate question will be how far can we go, and we want to reach where this is sociality level continuously from the beginning. And also there are, of course, issues about intrinsic motivations, predictive coding, and that drives the development. And recently, well, we tested with this fetus model various learning experiment, but we observed certain sort of a deadlock. Many learning experiments we observed certain extent of developmental change, at least acquiring two different behavior patterns with a single system without any explicit control, but not much farther than that. Experiments goes on to typically in a stable limit cycle state and doesn't go further. So that's why I mentioned we need this. So we were also working on these, but another thing is that the emotional system would be very important, because it gives you another very important factor of embodiment. And I suspect that this may play a crucial role in a continuous development. So we set off working on modeling this emotional system, but not in a typical way, recognizing surprise, pleasure, things like that. But we are building a model of a physiological model of cardiovascular system, respiratory system, based on a very extensive work by Molkoff's group, and then connected to the neural system, the brainstem circuitry with the cortical system, and trying to investigate how the body physiology, the cardiorespiratory dynamics interact through the nervous system with the cortical system, and perception and action. So I believe this adds a very important key to continuous autonomous development. Sorry. Now, back to the issue of the problems with current AI. Ethics or moral is an outstanding issue. Recently, many work points out that even in a very early stage of the early time of the development, human infants exhibit a certain sense of moral or justice or heroism. So this is one of such work by Kanakogi's group, Kanakogi and Myosense's group. So they showed that even 6-month-old baby, which they don't speak, so they cannot learn by being told what is good, what is bad, but they already understand that the difference between good guys and bad guys, and prefers good guys and things like that. So my question is, where does such a piece of humanity emerges in the course of continuous development, starting from sensory motor experiences? So we don't know yet, but I think this is also addressable by pursuing this continuous developmental modeling. Also about the consciousness, I view consciousness as the self-sustained, globally coupled dynamics that emerges from interaction past and current processes, and which has a global influence on the supporting processes. So it has a reciprocal structure, and in a way, this is the integration of all interaction dynamics through body and brain. Now, the aspect of the integration is, I think, similar to the IIT by Tononi. But of course, Tononi says only the cortical system is important. But I believe actually the body embodiment is crucial in this process. So in development of human cognition, I believe human mind architecture should emerge from human embodiment. And that will lead to the important solution to the current AI problems. Also about the moral ethics, things like that. If we have a developmental understanding of such factors, probably we can embed the seed of these functionalities deep in the development system. Deep embedding will be a solution to sort of a non-specific mechanism that handles such issues. So to summarize, I mentioned some problems with current AI, and I discussed how I understand the embodiment and related. So stepwise. We follow from brainless bodies, and then neural coupling, and then development. Now, currently, for me, outstanding questions like this: what happens in complex nervous system with complex embodiment? So there are many work on neural embodiment, embodied neural system, but like I showed in our model, extremely complex nervous system embodied in a very complex body and possibly in a very complex environment. We want to understand what's going to happen, and it's non-trivial. Even with our model, self-other distinction is actually non-trivial. It's not like with simple correlation you can handle these things because of the complexity. And also embodiment can potentially provide an unlimited variety of patterns and information. How probably the complex nervous systems can extract higher and higher order structures from embodiment, but we still don't know exactly how. What propels continuous open-ended development, and where and how human nature emerge. Another point of discussion could be my work focuses on human. So human body, human brain, human nature. Why not take a wider view of like any creature? And if you look at the body, brain, behavior, brain, co-evolution, probably that's the more general view. And we should take the artificial evolution approach. However, I believe, like the adaptive radiation happens, and there can be any patterns emerge. And what are the meaning of these? So that's why I deliberately focus on human embodiment and development. Of course, this is controversial. Also, I believe that intelligence is an anthropomorphic concept. Again, this is very controversial. I don't think that there is I don't think there is such things as like abstract general intelligence. When we talk about intelligence, always refer to human intelligence, and then we talk about the subset of that, or enhancing some functionality, but always the reference is humans. If anybody refute this view solidly, I will listen to. So that's why I focus on humans. And also another reason is that ultimately the findings should be very relevant to us. This is important, so that's why I'm interested in human embodiment. Okay, so that concludes my talk, and just here's an ad of our next generation AI research center. Partially, so my view is included in this framework, and together with many others collaborators, and exploring for next generation AI. So I stop here and probably take questions.
Okay, thank you, Yasuo. This is a wonderful introductory lecture for the Embodied Intelligence workshop, and yeah, it's very introductory, but at the same time very provocative, I would say. So this is a very good start of discussion. So there are actually lots of questions in the chat window, and I don't think we can handle all of this, but maybe, yeah, so you can answer to these questions after this session in the chat window, but also hopefully you can stay over the next panel discussion session for the more general discussion. So I just want to ask you one question about the complexity. So the complexity is the keyword for your concept, and I understood the complexity is a kind of prerequisite to understand human level intelligence and you know, other embodied intelligence. Is complexity a good way to think about it? Because you are also looking at the details is important, like how you know, the complexity of body is not just complex, but you know, certain mechanisms and principles are there. So how should we think of complexity? Like, well, first of all, complexity is a prerequisite or not, and the complexity is a good term, a good concept to think about, or is there any idea how we handle complexity from your point of view?
See, if you look at the complex system science, there's a long history of work with a low-dimensional, for example, nonlinear systems, and still it's a very difficult problem, but there are lots of knowledge. But when you increase the dimensionality, then everything becomes like almost you know, out of you know, out of control, you know, sort of difficult to understand. However, if you experimentally do run the very high dimensional nonlinear systems, and then you observe very interesting phenomena which cannot be observed in a low dimensional ones. So my point is that, of course, we as a scientist, we all know that we should come up work on some clearly definable, simple principles, and then reveal the underlying principles, you know, predictability, etc. But my belief is that's not enough. When you scale up the systems, like even the human brain, like, you know, dozens of billions of neurons, and human body, like not hundreds of muscles, it has even more degrees of freedom. So very complex system. So when you look at these, you cannot just simply extend what you understand from low dimensional system, but you should look at these systems directly and try to discover what is happening. And that will add a very new look into the underlying principle. I'm not sure if we can pin down a simple principle, but at least I can say that we cannot ignore what's really happening in the really complex systems, and it's really important to see it, you know, and try to understand.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
yeah, thank you very much for the insightful comments, and I think this is a very good question to start discussing through the next couple of days. And I think I'm going to stop this plenary session here now. And thank you very much, Yasuo, again, and hopefully we can stay for another discussion later. So I will,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yasuo. So I will stop here the first session, and have a bit of break for next 30 minutes, and we start the next panel discussion session from 10:30 GMT. So the speakers, please be ready to show up in the panel, and then we will start in 30 minutes. Thank you very much.